You know that feeling when you check your bank account and see more money than you've ever had in your entire life when you're 22 years old, living in your parents' basement? This documentary story follows Jake Morrison's journey from grinding in obscurity to making $20,000 in a single month, then losing it all through lavish spending and YouTube's demonetization changes. Well, let's just say he learned some expensive lessons along the way. Let me take you back to 2015. Jake Morrison was nobody special. He wasn't particularly talented, he didn't have connections in the industry, and he definitely didn't have money. What he did have was time, a cheap webcam, and an obsession with making people laugh. For 2 years, Jake uploaded videos almost every single day. Commentary videos, reaction content, gaming streams, pranks, basically anything he thought would get views. And for 730 days, his efforts amounted to not much. His channel hovered around 15,000 subscribers, his videos averaged maybe 2,000 views each. He was making about $50 a month from AdSense. $50. His friends told him to get a real job. His parents kept asking when he was going to grow up and be realistic. Even Jake himself was starting to wonder if he was chasing a pipe dream. But then something changed. In January 2017, Jake uploaded a video titled "Things Literally Nobody Asked For." It was a simple comedy sketch poking fun at unnecessary products and life hacks. Within 48 hours, it had 500,000 views. Within a week, it crossed 2 million. By the end of the month, it had been viewed over 5 million times. His subscriber count exploded from 15,000 to 250,000 in 3 weeks. Jake had finally cracked the code, or at least he thought he had. With his newfound momentum, Jake doubled down. He started uploading daily again, but this time, people were actually watching. Every video was getting hundreds of thousands of views. His subscriber count kept climbing 300K, 400K, 500K, and then the money started rolling in. His February AdSense payment was $3,500. In March, it jumped to $8,200. And in April 2017, when Jake checked his YouTube analytics, he saw something that made his hands shake. $20,000, $147.83 in ad revenue for a single month. $20,000. To put this in perspective, Jake had been working part-time at a coffee shop making $9.50 an hour. He would have had to work 2,120 hours, that's over a year of full-time work, to make what YouTube just paid him for 30 days of uploading videos. When that money hit his account in early May, Jake sat in his basement room and just stared at the screen. He had made it. All those people who doubted him, all those nights staying up until 3 a.m. editing videos, all the comments telling him to quit, they were all wrong. He was a successful YouTuber now. And successful people, Jake thought, live a certain way. Here's where our story takes a turn. Within a week of receiving that payment, Jake went on what he later described as the dumbest shopping spree of my life. First purchase, a fully loaded gaming setup. We're talking top-of-the-line PC, curved ultra-wide monitors, RGB everything, a $400 gaming chair, professional microphone, ring lights, the works. Total cost, $6,500. Jake told himself this was an investment in his channel, even though his old setup was working just fine. Second purchase, designer clothes. Jake had always worn thrift store finds and hand-me-downs, but successful YouTubers wore Supreme and Gucci, right? He dropped $2,800 on a new wardrobe in a single afternoon, including a $600 hoodie that he would later admit he wore exactly twice. Third purchase, a used BMW 3 Series. Jake didn't even need a car. He lived in a city with decent public transport, but something about having YouTuber money made him feel like he needed to look the part. The car cost him $12,000, and he paid cash on the spot because it felt powerful. Fourth purchase. The rest went to eating out every single day, buying rounds of drinks for friends at bars, and upgrading his phone even though his current one was only a year old. In less than 3 weeks, Jake had burned through nearly his entire $20,000. But here's the thing, he wasn't worried, because in his mind, this was just the beginning. If he made $20K in April, he'd make $20K in May, then June, then July. The money would keep coming. This was his new normal. Except it wasn't. Jake's May earnings came in at $18,500. Still incredible, right? But there was a problem. He'd already spent his April money. And now that he had car insurance payments, $220 a month for a 22-year-old male with a sporty car, higher expectations for his lifestyle, and expensive equipment that needed maintenance, his costs had exploded too. June earnings, $15,200. The views were starting to plateau. The algorithm wasn't pushing his content as aggressively. Other creators were copying his style, diluting his uniqueness. July earnings, $11,800. By August, Jake was starting to panic. His August check was only $8,900, and he was now spending about $3,500 a month just to maintain his new lifestyle. He'd moved out of his parents' house into his own apartment, $1,400 a month, was making car payments on a second vehicle he'd financed, and was eating out for literally every meal because that's what successful people do. And then came the email that changed everything. On September 14th, 2017, Jake received a notification from YouTube. Important changes to your channel's monetization status. His heart sank before he even opened it. YouTube was rolling out stricter advertiser-friendly guidelines, and several of Jake's most popular videos, the ones that had launched his channel into success, were being demonetized. They contained controversial content and inappropriate language that advertisers didn't want to be associated with. His back catalog of videos, which had been generating passive income every month, was suddenly cut off. New videos had to be carefully sanitized to avoid the same fate, but that meant they weren't as funny, weren't as edgy, and frankly, weren't getting the same views. September earnings, $4,200. October earnings, $2,800. November earnings, $1,900. In 7 months, Jake had gone from making $20,000 a month to barely scraping together enough to cover his rent. The BMW sat in his parking spot, a $12,000 reminder of his hubris. The gaming setup gathered dust because he was too stressed to create content. The designer clothes hung in his closet, tags still on some of them. Jake was forced to move back in with his parents. He sold the BMW at a $3,000 loss. He picked up shifts at his old coffee shop job, and every night he lay in his old basement room, the same room where he'd once received that life-changing $20,000 payment, and wondered how he'd messed up so badly. Now, I know what some of you were thinking. This guy was an idiot. Of course, you don't spend all your money immediately. And you're right. But here's the thing. Jake's story isn't unique. It happens all the time. Lottery winners go broke, athletes who make millions end up bankrupt, and yes, YouTubers who get their first taste of success blow it all because nobody teaches you how to handle sudden wealth. Jake eventually got back on his feet. He rebuilt his channel with a more sustainable approach, diversified his income streams, and learned to live below his means. But it took him 3 years to financially recover from those 3 weeks of spending. When I interviewed Jake for this video, he told me something that stuck with me. That $20,000 could have changed my life forever. If I'd invested it, if I'd saved it as an emergency fund, if I'd used it to actually build a sustainable business, I'd be in a completely different place right now. Instead, I have a few Instagram photos of me in expensive clothes I never wore and memories of driving a car I couldn't afford. The money's gone, but the regret isn't. The truth is, overnight success rarely lasts. YouTube's algorithm changes, trends shift, and what works today might not work tomorrow. The creators that survive aren't the ones that make the most money in a single month. They're the ones who prepare for the months when the money doesn't come. So if you're out there grinding, making content, dreaming of that first big paycheck, learn from Jake's mistake. When the money comes, and I hope it does, treat it like it might be the last big paycheck you ever get. Save it, invest it, build something sustainable with it. Because the algorithm giveth, and the algorithm can taketh away. And trust me, you don't want to be stuck explaining to your parents why you're moving back into the basement with an expensive gaming chair and a closet full of designer hoodies you never wear. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more cautionary tales from the hit that subscribe button. And if you've made similar mistakes with money, whether it's $20 or $20,000, drop a comment below. Let's learn from each other. Until next time, spend smart and create smarter.